4 hours and 17 minutes ago, observatories across the southern hemisphere witnessed something that fundamentally challenges our understanding of reality. 3i Atlas, the object we've been calling an interstellar comet, split open. Not fragmented like comets do when solar radiation weakens their structure. Opened, deliberately, mechanically, like a shell releasing its contents. What emerged has no classification in astronomical catalogs. It's not emitting light like stars. It's not reflecting light like planets. It's generating a field that bends space-time itself, creating visible distortions in the background star field. Telescopes attempting to photograph it are capturing images that violate the laws of optics. Spectroscopes are detecting wavelengths that shouldn't exist in our electromagnetic spectrum. And most impossibly, it's growing. When first detected at 0733 UTC, the object measured approximately 480 meters across. 4 hours later, it spans 2.7 kilometers and shows no sign of stopping. Mass doesn't spontaneously generate. Conservation of energy is supposed to be absolute. But whatever came out of 3i Atlas is rewriting physics in real time, while military satellites track its every transformation. I'm going to show you evidence that 18 hours ago didn't exist. Telescope images that astrophysicists are calling impossible. Spectroscopic data that material scientists say violates thermodynamics. Radio signals that information theorists can't decode because they operate on principles beyond human mathematics. This isn't a comet fragmenting. This isn't a natural event. This is technology so advanced it appears indistinguishable from magic, and it's currently 4.8 million kilometers from Earth and approaching. My sources include 7 professional astronomers who've abandoned their institutional positions rather than suppress what they've observed. 2 are former NASA scientists. 3 worked for European Space Agency. 1 was lead researcher at SETI. All have provided raw observational data, unprocessed images, and communications showing the coordinated international effort to keep this information contained. But containment failed the moment amateur networks started capturing the same impossible images. October 5, 2025, 0733, 14 UTC. Dr. Maria Reyes was conducting routine monitoring of 3i Atlas from Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory in Chile. Her 4-meter Blanco telescope was configured for photometric observation, measuring the object's brightness and rotational characteristics. The session was supposed to be unremarkable, just another data point in the ongoing catalog of this unusual visitor. Then her screen went white. Not dark like a power failure. White. Pure, overwhelming luminosity flooding the detector. Reyes initially thought the telescope had accidentally pointed at the sun or a bright star, but the coordinates were locked on 3i Atlas. The object itself had just increased brightness by a factor of 840 in less than 3 seconds. Nothing natural does that. Supernovae brighten over days. Even stellar flares take minutes. The brightness surge lasted 47 seconds before dropping to a new baseline 23 times brighter than pre-event levels. But during those 47 seconds, something changed. Time-resolved spectroscopy captured the transformation. The comet's signature, the spectral lines of water ice, carbon dioxide, and simple organics, vanished, replaced by emission lines that matched no database, no laboratory measurement, no known chemical element. Dr. Yuki Tanaka at Subaru Telescope in Hawaii caught the same event 6 seconds later due to light travel time. His high-resolution imaging revealed structural transformation. The nucleus of 3i Atlas, previously a roughly spherical mass about 1.2 kilometers across, was separating. Not crumbling. Splitting along geometric seams invisible in previous observations, like manufactured panels disengaging from a central core. Within 90 seconds, the outer shell had completely separated into 6 large fragments and dozens of smaller pieces. They didn't scatter randomly like debris. They moved in coordinated patterns, accelerating away from the core in mathematically precise trajectories. Orbital mechanics specialist Dr. James Mueller analyzed the fragment motions and found something staggering. Each piece was under powered flight, executing synchronized maneuvers, maintaining exact relative positions. The fragments formed a hexagonal array 3.8 kilometers across with the original core at the center, and that core was no longer a comet nucleus. High-resolution imaging showed a structure, unlike anything in solar system catalogs. Symmetrical, layered, geometric, patterns on the surface that spectral analysis indicated were composed of materials with optical properties that shouldn't exist. Negative refractive index, perfect electromagnetic absorption. regions that appeared to be reflecting light that hadn't yet arrived. Dr. Sarah Chen, formerly with NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, received the images through encrypted channels and immediately recognized what she was seeing. "This is a von Neumann probe," she told colleagues in a hastily organized video conference. "Self-replicating spacecraft designed for interstellar exploration. The fragments aren't debris. They're construction components. It's building something. Right now, in our solar system." A von Neumann probe is a theoretical concept, a spacecraft that can create copies of itself using raw materials from asteroids or comets. It's how an advanced civilization could explore the entire galaxy without launching billions of individual craft. Send out a single probe. It travels to a star system, gathers resources, builds copies of itself, and those copies continue the expansion. Exponential exploration across cosmic distances. Humanity has discussed the concept for decades. We've never built one because the technology is beyond our capabilities. But an interstellar civilization thousands or millions of years ahead of us? For them, it could be standard. And if 3I Atlas was the protective shell transporting components across light years, then what we're witnessing is the activation phase. The probe arriving at its destination and beginning its programmed mission. By 0845 UTC, just 72 minutes after the opening event, the structure had grown to 1.4 kilometers. Not through matter appearing from nothing, but through assembly. The fragments were moving to the central core, docking with precision measured in centimeters, adding their mass and structure to a growing configuration. Time-lapse imaging showed construction occurring at rates that would take human engineering teams months, happening in minutes. Dr. Heinrich Krauss at ASA ran mass calculations based on photometric brightness and orbital perturbations. The assembled structure was exhibiting mass approximately 4.7 times greater than the sum of the original nucleus and visible fragments. Either there was hidden mass inside the shell that hadn't been accounted for, or the structure was somehow concentrating mass from surrounding space. Both explanations violated established physics. Then the spectroscopic readings became truly incomprehensible. Dr. Elena Vasquez at Keck Observatory captured spectra showing absorption lines at wavelengths that don't exist in standard physics. The electromagnetic spectrum runs from radio waves through visible light to gamma rays. But the spectra from the growing structure included absorption features at wavelengths between established bands, in regions where quantum mechanics says electromagnetic radiation can't exist. It's as if the structure is interacting with dimensions of spacetime we can't normally access, Vasquez explained in leaked audio from an ESA emergency consultation. Theoretical physics talks about additional spatial dimensions beyond our observable three. If this technology can manipulate those dimensions, it could access energy and matter from regions we literally can't see. That would explain the mass discrepancy and the impossible spectra. By 10 Boykat UTC, military reconnaissance satellites had repositioned for continuous monitoring. The National Reconnaissance Office tasked 3 KH-11 optical surveillance satellites toward 3I Atlas. Infrared sensors detected thermal signatures that made no sense. Regions of the structure were colder than cosmic background radiation, approximately 2.7 Kelvin. That's impossible without active cooling, and even then, physics sets limits. These regions were measuring 1.8 Kelvin, below what thermodynamics allows in this universe. Other regions showed thermal signatures exceeding 15,000 Kelvin, hot enough to vaporize any known material, yet the structure maintained coherence. Materials science says nothing can be solid at those temperatures, but the imaging clearly showed solid structures glowing white-hot, yet retaining their geometric configurations. Either the materials had properties beyond terrestrial science, or the thermal readings were measuring something other than conventional temperature. Amateur astronomers around the world were now observing the impossible in real time. Social media exploded with images that mainstream platforms immediately flagged as manipulated or fake. But independent analysis proved authenticity. Thousands of observers with different equipment from different locations were capturing the same anomalies. You can't fake that level of coordination. The event was real. The physics was wrong. Dr. Marcus Chen, the data scientist who resigned after his 3I Atlas timing analysis was rejected, began crowdsourcing observations through encrypted networks. Within 6 hours, he'd collected data from 847 independent observers across 62 countries. The distributed network approach made suppression impossible. Every attempt to remove data from one server spawned mirrors on 10 others. The truth was decentralizing faster than control could propagate. Chen's analysis revealed patterns in the construction sequence. The structure wasn't growing randomly. It was following a blueprint, an assembly sequence that could be tracked frame by frame. It's like watching a building being constructed, Chen noted, except the building is restructuring space around itself. Every component that docks causes localized space-time curvature visible in the background star field. It's literally warping reality as it builds. The space-time distortion became the most visually striking element. High-precision astrometry measuring star positions near 3I Atlas showed displacement. Stars that should appear in specific coordinates were offset by up to 1.2 arcseconds when viewed near the structure. Einstein's general relativity predicts this. Massive objects curve spacetime, bending light passing nearby. But the mass required to produce 1.2 arcsecond deflection would be approximately the mass of Jupiter concentrated in a structure just a few kilometers across. The density would collapse into a black hole. Yet the structure remained stable. Unless, Dr. Sarah Chen proposed in an underground research forum, unless the structure isn't creating space-time curvature through mass. What if it's directly manipulating space-time geometry through technology? Advanced civilizations might be able to engineer space-time the way we engineer materials. Instead of bending space with mass, they'd be programming the curvature directly. That would explain the gravitational lensing without the impossible density. By 11:30 UTC, the structure had reached 2.2 kilometers and begun exhibiting new behaviors. Pulses of light radiated from the core in coordinated patterns. Not continuous emission like a star. Not chaotic like plasma. Structured pulses at precise intervals varying between 0.73 and 1.84 seconds. Information theorists analyzing the patterns found embedded mathematical sequences, prime numbers, Fibonacci progressions, fractal geometries, and structures that matched no known mathematical systems. Dr. Lisa Zhang, a mathematician specializing in extraterrestrial communication at Berkeley's SETI Research Center, recognized elements of the pattern. This resembles the Arecibo message we sent in 1974, she explained, but vastly more complex. We transmitted 1679 bits. This is transmitting at approximately 10⁻⁷ bits per second in what appears to be multi-dimensional encoding. It's not just sending information, it's sending information about information. Meta-communication, teaching the receiver how to decode higher layers. Amateur radio astronomers detected the transmissions at multiple frequencies simultaneously. The structure was broadcasting across the electromagnetic spectrum from extreme low-frequency radio waves to ultraviolet, possibly higher, but our instruments can't detect beyond UV. Each frequency carried different information, but the timing coordinated perfectly across all bands. This was engineered communication of staggering sophistication. Then at 12:14 UTC, everything changed again. The structure stopped growing. The pulsing intensified to a blinding strobe visible to optical telescopes as a star-like point source, and it began moving, not continuing 3I Atlas's original trajectory, accelerating perpendicular to its previous path, directly toward Earth's orbital plane with acceleration measured at 0.047 g. Continuous thrust, something that would require energy generation we can barely imagine. Space surveillance networks worldwide went to maximum alert. A 2.7-kilometer structure accelerating at nearly half a g doesn't behave like any natural object. That's powered flight. That's intent. And the trajectory calculations showed intercept with Earth's orbit in 43 hours at current acceleration, not Earth itself. The structure would cross Earth's orbital path when our planet was elsewhere. But the deliberate trajectory change toward human-occupied space was unmistakable. Military leadership across every major spacefaring nation convened emergency sessions. The United States activated NORAD's space defense protocols. Russia declared a national security event. China's PLA Strategic Support Force went to elevated readiness. The European Space Agency suspended all non-essential operations. Japan mobilized its self-defense force space monitoring units. India's ISRO began emergency consultations with Defense Ministry. The world's militaries were preparing for an encounter none had contingencies for. Leaked communications from US Space Command showed the stark reality. We have no interception capability. No kinetic weapons can reach target at current distance. Nuclear options would require 72+ hours for launch preparation. Laser systems insufficient for target of this size. Recommendation: prepare for observation and potential first contact scenarios rather than defensive engagement. The diplomatic channels went into overdrive. The United Nations Security Council held an emergency closed session at 14 UTC, all 15 members present. Discussion lasted 87 minutes with no public statement afterward, but leaked minutes revealed the focus, drafting first contact protocols, designating official speakers for humanity, coordinating scientific response, and critically, discussing civilian information management. They were debating whether to tell the public. The decision was made to maintain information control for another 24 hours while government prepared official statements. But that decision was obsolete before implementation. Millions of amateur astronomers could see the structure with backyard telescopes. It was now magnitude 4.7, visible to naked eye in dark skies as a faint star. Social media was exploding with observations, theories, and images. The cat wasn't just out of the bag. It was broadcasting from rooftops worldwide. Dr. James Patterson, the former NASA imaging specialist who analyzed earlier 3I Atlas images, went public with a comprehensive video presentation at 15:30 UTC. Using compiled data from dozens of professional and amateur sources, he demonstrated the impossible physics, the coordinated construction, the space-time manipulation, and the current trajectory toward Earth's orbit. His video reached 2.4 million views before being removed from major platforms. But mirrors proliferated across decentralized networks. The information was unstoppable. Religious leaders worldwide began issuing statements. The Vatican's Pontifical Academy of Sciences released a position paper on theological implications of non-terrestrial intelligence that had apparently been prepared years earlier and held for this scenario. Islamic scholars from Al-Azhar University convened emergency councils. Buddhist, Hindu, and Sikh leadership issued calls for calm and spiritual preparation. Humanity's spiritual frameworks were activating for an event that would challenge fundamental assumptions about our place in the universe. Stock markets opened Monday morning to immediate volatility. Asian markets dropped 7% before trading halts kicked in. European markets followed with 5% declines. US futures predicted similar crashes. But interestingly, certain sectors surged. Aerospace and defense companies jumped 23%, telecommunications up 18%, alternative energy up 31%. Investors were positioning for a world about to change radically. The economic implications of confirmed advanced extraterrestrial technology were playing out in real time. Meanwhile, the scientific observations continued relentlessly. At 1647 UTC, Dr. Elena Vasquez reported new spectroscopic findings. The structure was emitting neutrinos. Massive quantities of neutrinos detectable by underground detectors like IceCube in Antarctica and Super Kamiokande in Japan. Neutrinos are nearly massless particles that barely interact with matter. The sun produces them through nuclear fusion. But the neutrino flux from this structure exceeded solar output from an object millions of times smaller. It was running fusion reactions, possibly matter-antimatter annihilation, or something even more exotic for power generation. The structure's growth had plateaued at 2.7 kilometers, but internal changes continued. Thermal imaging showed dynamic patterns, regions activating and deactivating in sequences. Radio emissions increased in complexity, and most startling, gravitational wave detectors at LIGO and Virgo registered faint signals synchronized with the structure's pulse patterns. Gravitational waves are ripples in spacetime itself, usually produced by colliding black holes or neutron stars. This structure was modulating spacetime at will. Dr. Sarah Chen compiled a comprehensive analysis shared across scientific networks. What we're observing is technology that manipulates fundamental forces and dimensions beyond our current physics. The structure demonstrates 1. Direct spacetime geometry manipulation creating artificial gravity. 2. Access to energy sources exceeding conventional fusion by orders of magnitude. 3. Materials with properties impossible under known physics. 4. Communication protocols operating on mathematical principles we're only beginning to recognize. And 5. Deliberate trajectory toward human-occupied space suggesting awareness and intent. As I record this, 43 hours remain until the structure crosses Earth's orbital plane. Current trajectory suggests closest approach at 1.2 million kilometers from Earth, 4 times the distance to the Moon. Close enough for detailed observation. Close enough for potential communication. Close enough that if it wanted to deploy something toward Earth, we'd have minutes of warning, not hours. Governments are scrambling to prepare official first contact protocols. Scientists are coordinating observation campaigns. Military forces are on alert for scenarios they don't have playbooks for. Religious leaders are helping communities process the existential implications. and ordinary people worldwide are watching their skies, seeing with their own eyes a light that shouldn't exist, growing brighter each hour, carrying implications that will echo through human history forever. Whatever 3i Atlas was carrying has emerged. It's building itself into something vast and impossible. It's manipulating physics in ways that challenge our fundamental understanding of reality. And in 43 hours, it will be close enough that whatever happens next will happen to all of us. The cover-up has failed. The evidence is overwhelming. The countdown is absolute, and humanity faces its greatest transformation not through gradual discovery, but through direct encounter with technology so advanced it appears indistinguishable from the divine. This is first contact. Not someday. Not maybe. Now. Subscribe for continuous updates as the structure approaches. The next 43 hours will determine whether humanity is ready to join a universe far stranger and more magnificent than we ever imagined, or whether we'll retreat into denial of evidence our own eyes can see. The choice isn't whether this is real. The choice is whether we're brave enough to face reality when it arrives on our doorstep, writing technology that rewrites the possible.